I want to talk about two people's stories that I heard recently. And I heard these two stories one day after the other. And I feel that these two should be connected in our society. And I know that they're not. And I think that the solution to all the world's problems is getting these two people connected somehow in the fabric of our society. And the real tragedy is I don't think either of them feel connected to anyone, and that's the problem. So if we can get these two people together in a metaphysical, we're all 2 points on a cloth kind of way, I think that we'll solve a lot of problems. The first one is a doctor, and a very, very good doctor. She's a research doctor. She has been able to accomplish everything that we've all been told that we should ever accomplish in our lives. She's making bucket loads of money. She's at the top of her field. She was headhunted, and that's how she made it here to Portland, Oregon, was because she was so prestigious that they pulled her from the East Coast to be a part of our family. And she's 35, and she doesn't have any kids, and she's never going to, and she wants kids. But we'll never let her have any, because this was her path. She got out of high school at whatever age you get out of high school, 18, and went into school, and she went into med school, and that's 8 years of her life. So you're getting to 24 years old. That's the age that many, but not all people have kids. And when she finished, she had to go on to do a residency. And the way that this works is, to become a residency is 3 years. Or 2 years, depending on your specialization. But hers was 3 years. And before that, she had to do a transitional year. It's kind of like an internship. So that's another 4-year period. And she's already 24. But the deal is you basically have to do the transitional right away after you do your medical schooling, because you have to get letters from the school. They just send out junk letters, well, not junk letters, mail to all of their students saying, okay, since we know you're all going to do the transitional year, then we'll process it for you. Just give us your name and you'll move on with your life. So you go straight after that in the transitional year. And it is a given, I think it's a requirement, that you do a residency immediately after your transitional year. Well, she was 24 at that point. You add on to that and it's 28. And the only way that you can really get a prestigious job, or even a really decent job in the medical field, is through connections from your residency, or at least that tends to be the case. So straight out of her residency, she goes on to practice medicine. And she practices it for a few years until she gets headhunted and moves on, and now she's where she is today, but she's in her 30s. And she hasn't had time for a relationship, let alone for a pregnancy. And that's a story that all sorts of professionals, they say they're married to their career. But she was never given a choice, because no matter how devoted or not devoted she was to her career, the bare minimum, the absolute lowest bar, was that she could not stop until she was 28. Now, there's nothing that a woman can do about having to stop when she's pregnant. For at least a month beforehand and several months afterwards, the usual 3 months that people tend to take, that's really the minimum. And people who are pressured to go to work after just a few weeks, for one thing, it's not successful for them either as a parent or as an employee. But it's certainly not allowed for someone in such a competitive industry as medicine. But they have the entire thing built so that you can't. That if you step out at any point in this process, you simply never get to be a doctor. And they've invested $250,000 at this point, and basically all of their lives. Now, if you're a man and you get someone pregnant, then it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult. It's not anything I could do, but it's an option. It is a choice because you aren't pregnant. So men don't have this problem, and it's not a sexist issue. It's not an issue of sexism per se. It's just that this is an industry that was built for men. And it's gender neutral in that they could not care if you're a woman or not. They just say, this is how we built it. It was never a problem when it was all men. So if you want to exist in the man's world, then you have to essentially never be a woman. And I'm not going to rant on that specifically, because that's not the problem, because I know about people that do the married to the job sort of thing. However, I want to combine this woman and this woman's life with another man that I met. And this was a man who responded to an article that I wrote last week regarding tuitions. Because here in Oregon, we now have 3 options, or we will have 3 options soon. You can pay your way through school, you can get student loans, or you can pay a tax. And essentially, you just go to school for however long and you don't worry about tuition, and then you pay a tax for the rest of your life that's going to pay for future people to go to school. And this guy was really, there was definitely a chip on his block that any sort of government involvement was a no-no. And this wasn't a Tea Partier. This wasn't a neocon. This wasn't a libertarian. This was a guy who said, just don't deal with the government. If you want to go to school, put some money aside and go. If you want your kids to go to side, save some money when they're born, add a little bit to it, and by the time they're in college, you can afford tuition. And I was ready to get into the entire debate of, oh, you don't care about poor people and all that. I had my talking points in front of me ready to go. But after talking to him for a little while and saying, well, poor people don't have that option, blah, 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 he said, well, no matter who has the option, I've been paying taxes for this. I've been paying for people to go to school. And then when I got to the point where I could go, I applied for a grant and I didn't get it. I didn't get to go to school. Even though I had paid my way into the system, I didn't get to go. And I ended up working at McDonald's. And I paid my way through school until I couldn't afford it anymore. And as soon as I could no longer pay tuition and they wouldn't pay the grants, I had to drop out. It didn't matter how well I was doing because I didn't have a sports scholarship. I wasn't a 4.0 student. And that was it. That was the end of my story. And I've already paid all this money to people that aren't me. And I'm not going to give any more. And I'm tired of listening to people talk about how we need to have something available for the poor people, that money should never be an option for people to get into school, that it should be based on merit, because he was good enough. He wasn't the best, but he was good enough. He was at least as smart as me. And I went to school because my parents paid my way for school. He didn't because his parents didn't. And he had come to accept that life. He had come to accept a world where he got the short end of the stick because his parents couldn't pay his way and he couldn't pay his own way. And he was content with that. But he was damn sure that he wasn't going to pay taxes on top of it. He wasn't going to add insult to injury. And what I realized about these 2 people is that nobody helped them. Nobody ever supported them. And there's different philosophical and political points of view of whether you should help them or whether they shouldn't, or maybe there's decisions they could have made differently. Maybe if he was better able to work at somewhere better than McDonald's or something, he could have gone to school, or maybe she could have worked a way to have kids early on in college and continue to make it work. There's always moms that have 2 kids and continue to go to school full time and work. And maybe that could have happened, but those are the best of us. Those are the exceptions. Those are the exceptional ones. The normal ones are not getting the help they need. And here's why I think these 2 need to get together. This is why I think the woman needs to step back. The doctor needs to step back and have more time to do things and make less money and have lower expectations for her. Lower the bar for her. And then her money that she would have otherwise made could go towards educating these guys who, or this guy who maybe wasn't the smartest, but he was working hard and he deserved something. And we're spreading those two apart. We're saying, work as hard as you can and we'll reward you with more money than you'll ever need at the sacrifice of everything else. Or if you don't make it, you get nothing and we won't help you and it's your fault. And the reason that these two need to help each other is because right now we've lost both of them and their kids and their progeny, all of them. Because this guy who could have been a college graduate, who could have had a college graduate job, who would have had taxes that he would have been willing to pay, won't. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't want to help. And he will do anything he can to prevent other people from getting the help that he didn't get. Because he already paid in. They already got the money that he was supposed to get. And then this woman, no, she's a wonderful woman. She's a friend of mine, but she'll never have kids, period. There will be no continued line. So you have no positive vibes continuing on. You have no ideas of collectivism and sharing and helping one another. Because when we don't help one another, we create selfish people. Selfish begets selfish, and self-serving begets self-serving. And these were both people that we had a chance. We had one of the smartest people in the country, frankly, who will not carry on that line. And we had one of the hardest working, most well-meaning, liberal-minded blue-collar workers turn into a hyper neocon, every man for himself. We need to help these people. And we need to help them if for no other reason than purely out of selfish intentions. Because our kids are going to need help. Whether it's because they're smart and need to succeed, or because they're wealthy and need some time off, or because they're wealthy and they need this guy to have a college education to work for them. It doesn't matter. We're creating a selfish generation by being selfish ourselves. We have to stop. We have to start being generous. We have to start ignoring the selfish people around us, or else they are going to dictate our future. And I don't know how, and I don't know how we get those people back, or if we can. And I don't know how we move forward now that we've created those people, but we have to try.